Hello everyone, welcome to the 23rd episode of the Ultimate AFL show for season 2016. Can you believe it? 23 episodes already. This AFL season has just flown by. It is incredible. Now in today's episode I'm going to be looking back at round 18 as well as looking towards round 19, retro round as Fox Footy is calling it. And in fact, there's some big milestones coming up in round 19 as well. Some record-breaking milestones that I'll talk about at the back end of this episode. But first, let's get straight into looking back at round 18. Round 18 started at Etihad Stadium on Friday night between Collingwood and North Melbourne. A massive clash for both teams. Of course, Collingwood trying to keep their final chances alive, and North Melbourne, we know that they've been in horrible form since that 9 straight, only winning one in the past month or so. So this is a massive match for them, of course. It was also kind of a match to take a little bit of pressure off, not a whole lot of pressure, but a little bit of pressure off them because, well, their spot in the finals has been slipping with the losses they've had. And to North Melbourne's credit, they really came out and won the match in the first quarter, in my opinion, to be quite truthful. They kicked the first few goals of the match, had a good quarter-time lead, 6-5 to 2-2. They led comfortably at half-time, 10-7 to 4-4. It was kind of close at three-quarter time, 14-10 North Melbourne to Collingwood 10-7. The margin was actually cut to 17 points at one stage, North Melbourne leading, so it was close a little bit into the fourth term, but to North Melbourne's credit, they were able to compose themselves, hang on and actually get a really comfortable win against the Collingwood Magpies. The final score, North Melbourne 18-16, 124, defeated Collingwood 12-12, 84 in a very good game by them in the end. Some sloppy skills by Collingwood. It felt like Collingwood were really getting rattled by the, I guess, the spot fires and the fighting in the match. It kind of took the wind out of them a little bit, to be quite truthful. And yeah, their skills were quite sloppy, to be truthful as well. Collingwood, North Melbourne's skills at various stages were pretty poor as well. But North Melbourne, half and half. They were sloppy with their skills at times, but very good as well. So the goal kickers, Blair kicked 2 for Collingwood, as well as Moore, Greenwood and White Sidebottom also kicking 2. You then had Pendlebury for solo getting singles on the board. Thomas, he had a very good game kicking 5. Petrie, Brown, Zeeble, Dermott, Harvey kicked 2 each. You then had McMillan, Gibson and also Goldstein getting on the score sheet as well with singles. So it was a must-win for North Melbourne. They've done that, and they've got a big match coming up on Saturday night in round 19. Saturday football started at the SCG between the Swans and the Blues, who have already met once this year. They met in round 2 at Etihad Stadium, where the Swans won pretty convincingly in the end. Now the Swans were, I guess, motivated and very confident to win this game against the Blues after their loss to Hawthorn a couple of Thursday nights ago. So they were really motivated to win this match. But to the Blues' credit, they led at quarter time 5-1 to 4-4, and in fact had a half-time lead of 7-3 to 5-7. It was only in the third quarter where the Swans were able to take the lead by a couple of goals, 9-11 to 9-4. But in the end, the Swans won not convincingly. The Blues have to be credited for this match because they really did take it up to the Swans. The final score 10-14, 74. The Swans defeated Carlton 10-8, 68. The goal kickers, Franklin kicked 4, of course, goalless last week against Hawthorn, got 4 on the board, which is fantastic to see from his point of view. Parker Richards got 2 each. You then had Kennedy and Jack kicking singles in this game for the Swans. The Carlton goal kickers, Curnow kicked 2, the only multiple goal kicker for the Blues. That's E. Curnow, by the way. The other Curnow got a single. You then had Sumner, Armfield, Cruiser, Buckley, Boakhurst, Savani and Casbolt kicking singles in this match for the Blues. I think to the Blues' credit, they really did take it up to the Swans and did well. And, it is hard, even though Hawks beat the Swans at the SCG, the Dogs beat the Swans at the SCG, it is quite hard to win at the SCG against the Swans. It has proven that this year in various games. It's just in the last couple of weeks where the Swans have taken the foot off the gas in the last 2 minutes and actually lost the game. And it looked like they might be doing this in this match, but they were able to compose themselves and hold on, which is something they have to do in more of their games. So Carlton haven't been winning games in the last few weeks as what they were in the start of the year, but they've been in games and been finishing off games well and really trying to get that win, but obviously the other side's been too good. So credit to Carlton. They've got a big game coming up on Saturday, which I actually believe they can take it up to Hawthorn, but obviously not win. But yeah, very good display by Carlton. The Swans not impressive, but they got the job done, and they got what was pretty much needed a must-needed 4 points. The other Saturday afternoon game was at Metricon Stadium in the Gold Coast between the Gold Coast Suns and Fremantle. You might remember that I actually tipped the Gold Coast Suns last week on the show, and I was feeling more and more confident about that tip after the Thursday night teams were released. You had, Pavlich, Ballantyne, and also Barlow. That's three of probably your top 5 players who are in the top 5 at Fremantle all out. So this was always going to be a hard task for Fremantle, and it was proving that way in the first quarter. In fact, the Suns had a pretty healthy lead at quarter time, 5-2 to 3-0. At half time, however, Fremantle were able to take the half-time lead in the second quarter and lead 9-5 to 8-3 to their credit. So the Dockers had a lead at half-time and were in the game. The three-quarter time score, 12-7 to 10-6 with the Suns leading, and then in the end the Suns won convincingly. A good result for them, 16-9, 105. Defeated the Dockers 12-9, 81. It's been really good to see the Suns winning winning more games the last month. So of course they've defeated St Kilda, and then they also defeated the Lions, and now that they've defeated Fremantle, that's 3 wins in the last 4 weeks, which is very good from their point of view. And Freo, they were in the game at various stages, but obviously dropped off in the end to allow the Suns to win. So the final goal kickers for this match for the Gold Coast Suns, May kicked 4, Lynch kicked 4 as well. You then had Wright who kicked 3. That is 3 power forwards for the or 3 big men for the Suns, which is very impressive. They've got some impressive big players who can really play, and I guess you could say provide that historical original forward structure. That original big forward gun up in the full forwards. That's fantastic to see. You then had Grant who kicked 2. That's very surprising, but very good from his point of view, because he hasn't had the best year, and he didn't have the best year of the Dogs last year, so good to see he got a couple on the score sheet. Matera, Sexton and Martin got singles each for the Suns. Dockers goal kickers, Walters got 4, Langdon, Yaron got 2. You then had Tabernar, Pearce, Neal and Griffin getting singles to put themselves on the Freo goal sheet. So Gold Coast getting another win. That's their 3rd in the last 4 weeks. The Saturday twilight game was at Subiaco between the Eagles and the D's. This was a very interesting game. In fact, the D's led at every single break except the full-time break, or the full-time after the full-time siren. In fact, they led at quarter time by 1 point. They led by 2 points at half-time. They led by about a goal at three-quarter time, 8-4 West Coast to Melbourne, 8-10. So that is 6 points. So that's a goal. And then in the end, they actually lost by a goal. The Eagles were able to get in front, keep the D's scoreless in the fourth quarter, and the Eagles were able to pinch the win. Probably a win they didn't deserve, to be quite honest. I thought Melbourne were really good in this match. So the final score, the Eagles 10-6-66 defeated Melbourne 8-12-60. The goal kickers, Kennedy kicked 3. He was pretty good. Pritis, Darling, Duggan, Lysette, Cripps, Gaff and Hill got singles each in this game. You then had the D's goal kickers, Garlick kicked 3, Dawes kicked 2, Jones, Petrarca and Kent kicked singles each in this game for the D's. So I thought they deserved the win, but they just couldn't quite compose themselves in the last quarter of the D's, and the Eagles were able to snatch the victory. So played in way over 33,000, close to 34,000. It was a ripper game. One of two Saturday night games on Saturday night was at Etihad Stadium between the Dogs and the Saints. And I was at this game. This was one of the games I attended in round 18. And yeah, if you are a dog supporter, then you will know. And even if you're not a dog supporter or watch the game, or even if you've been watching the AFL shows throughout the week, you would know that this was a pretty heartbreaking, bit of a heartbreaking night for the Dogs. Not just because they lost, but also because of the injury crisis that came out of it. The Dogs had a quarter-time lead, 4-2 to 3-3. They were down at half-time, 7-4 to 6-4 to the Saints' credit, and then basically the Saints led at three-quarter time and were able to take a 15-point win, which was, to the Saints' credit, pretty good because they played some great football in this match, and the Dogs, well, they just couldn't get the basics right. It's simple as that. So the final score, the Dogs 9-6-60 defeated by the Saints 11-9-75. As I mentioned, a big injury crisis for the Dogs. You had Dale Morris, who did a left quad, basically sat out the second half, unlikely to play this week. Jack Redpath did an ACL, right knee, and he's gone for the season and he's out for 12 months. And then Mitch Wallace was probably the most heartbreaking of all. They are all heartbreaking injuries, especially Jack Redpath and Mitch Wallace. But Mitch Wallace, I'll tell you what, he did his left ankle. If you've watched the vision, it's quite, I guess, very heartbreaking to see. He had to get stretched off. He was in the rooms, I think, for quite a long time just to try and get the pain away before he was actually taken to hospital, which is just incredible. He's had surgery this week, so he's spending 12 months on the sideline, which is a shame because he's been in great form and he's been great for this club over the last couple of years. He's been playing a bit of a forward role in the last couple of weeks, especially last week against the Suns, and was performing really well. And it's just heartbreaking. This is coming from a dog supporter, but yeah, they can't win a trick at the moment, the Dogs, and I guess there's other teams as well who can't win a trick as well over the last couple of years. The Suns, etc., is an example, and hopefully we're not one of those teams who are going to get injuries in the next couple of years to, I guess, fade us out of the premiership era. But we'll be right. We've still got a very good side. The goal kickers for the Dogs, Bontempelli kicked 3, Dixon kicked 2, Smith, Redpath, Suckling and Jong all got singles. The Saints goal kickers, Riewoldt kicked 4. The Dogs just weren't able to stop Riewoldt throughout the night. Pretty poor, to be honest. Membury kicked 2. You then had Weller, Armitage, Stephen, Gresham, and also Wright kicking singles in the match via the Dogs. So St Kilda have got a big game coming up. They have kept their final chances. They're alive. They're currently in 9th, which is fantastic from their point of view. And the Dogs, well, I'll tell you more about what I think about their upcoming game a bit later, but they've still got a good side, and they've got Stringer Dalehouse coming back. I think they'll be right. I think they'll challenge in the finals and possibly do well. Whether they'll make the grand final or not is another thing, another story for another day, but they've still got a good side, some good players. Bontempelli in form. Obviously Smith's just come back and is doing pretty well. You've got some other players as well. Obviously Lockie Hunter, Jack McRae. They've still got a good side, and you just got to get Tom Boyd right playing that full forward role, and I think they'll still be very good this year. The other Saturday night game was at Simonds Stadium in Geelong between the Crows and, of course, Geelong v Adelaide. And the Crows were in it right up until half-time before Geelong were able to take the lead in the second half and really take a good lead, and in the end they won. They won by 30 points in the end, which was quite impressive from their point of view. The final score was 12-13-85, defeated the Adelaide Crows 7-13-55. The goal kickers for Geelong, Hawkins, impressive in this game, kicked 4, as well as Menzel, who also kicked 4. Stanley, Guthrie, Cockatoo and also McCarthy got on the score sheet with singles. From an Adelaide goal kicker's perspective, Jenkins kicked 3, Lynch kicked 2, Booz and Douglas kicked singles in this match at Simonds Stadium. Another game I attended was the Sunday early afternoon game at 1:10 p.m. at Etihad Stadium. Bottom 2 clash, Essendon and Brisbane. Of course, the fight for, I guess, a second win, and of course the loser got a prize in pick 1 most likely, unless the loser gets a second win, which is very unlikely. But I was actually stunned by this game because I tipped Essendon, but I didn't expect the Brisbane Lions to come out and play the way they did. In fact, they played one of the best games they've played this season. a high score, the highest score they've ever kicked this year. And I tell you what, I'm giving them a bit of a sniff for next week's game, to be honest, because they played some great football in this match, and Essendon were quite poor. In fact, the skills that they displayed were quite poor. In fact, they were probably TAC Cup kind of skills, or maybe even lower. They were quite poor in their skills department on Sunday. So obviously Brisbane Lions, they led pretty convincingly at every change. Essendon were just playing catch-up footy throughout the entire entire afternoon, and they lost 12-19, 91, defeated by the Lions 28-128. The goal kicks for the Bombers, Danaher kicked 4. He had a good day, I thought. Showed some signs, and he is showing some signs as a forward this year. We know that. Fantasia kicked 3, Langford, Hams, Dempsey, Brown and McDonald. Tip and Woody kicked singles each for the Bombers. For the Lions, you've got a few multiple goal kickers here from the Lions. Walker kicked 4, Matheson, Cutler, Green, Dawson kicked 2 each. You then had Bilwick, Martin, Hipwood, who kicked a very good goal in this game. Bastanak, Mays, Hanley, Rockcliffe and Rich kicked singles each for the Lions. It was played played in front of just over 34,000, which I thought was a very good crowd for what was a bottom 2 clash. The mid-Sunday afternoon game was in Melbourne at the MCG, home of footy between Hawthorn and Richmond. Of course, Hawthorn coming off a great win, a great 5-point win against the Swans at the SCG last round. And, well, it was a close game in the first half. In fact, scores were level at quarter time. Hawthorn had a narrow lead at half time. But then the second half was where it really opened up, and the Hawks, being the great team they have been over the last 3 or so years, just took the game away from the Tigers and won pretty convincingly, 16-8, 114, defeating Richmond 5-14-44. The goal kickers for the Hawks, Rioli kicked 3, as well as Gunston and Sicily. Bruce kicked 2, Palopolo, O'Rourke, Whitecross, Gibson and McEvoy kicked singles each. The Richmond goal kickers, Rewald kicked 2, Rioli, Drummond and Cochin kicked the singles. 5 goals in a game is very disgraceful from a Richmond point of view, and from any AFL club point of view. If you're kicking 5 goals in a match, you're not a good side, in my opinion. So that just explains how bad and how poor they've been this season. So, yeah, good win for the Hawks. They're still on top of the ladder. We'll see that in just a second. And Richmond, well, they're just developing now, aren't they? I guess their grand final hopes of the last couple of years are gone, and they're basically starting fresh and sort of rebuilding. And the final game of round 18 was at Adelaide Oval between Port Adelaide and the GWS Giants. I actually went to a bar after the Essendon Lions game and sat down and actually watched this game. And I don't watch a lot of Twilight games, but when I do, they normally are the good ones. And this was a really good match. In fact, it was wet. It was quite. I'll say it was a little bit sloppy because the first goal didn't come until late in the first quarter. But it was a very good game of football. And, Port Adelaide had a lead of 2-2 to 0-2 at quarter time. GWS hadn't kicked a goal until the second quarter. Port Adelaide led with a very good lead at half time, 6-3 to 2-7. To GWS's credit, though, they were able to come back in the third quarter and lead at three-quarter time, 7-11 to 7-5. And then in the end, GWS won by 19 points in what was an impressive win by them. Wasn't sure if they were going to win this game, and, well, they did to their credit. And the final score, 9-6-60 Port Adelaide to GWS, 11-13, 79. The goal kickers, Ebert kicked 4 for Port Adelaide, Gray kicked 3, and then Wingard kicked a single. The Giants goal kickers, Cameron Smith kicked 2 each, Shields, Scully, Reid, Patton, Gongilio, Green kicked singles each in this game. So it was a very good game. I enjoyed watching this. It was a great ending game to round 18. Okay, time to have a look at the stats leaders, the stats wrap up after round 18. I'll start with the leading goal kickers. Kennedy still has the lead with 58 goals. Franklin is only 1 goal behind him on 57. Tom Lynch is third on 55. Jenkins on 47 in fourth, and then Betts on 45 in fifth. No real changes there to the top 5 except how many goals they have. The leading disposals, Lachie Neale still leads on 560. Dangerfield trying to catch him. He's second on 536. Dustin Martin has rose up to third on 522. Treloar on fourth on 512. And then on 510 is Dan Handlebury rounding out the top five. The leading marks, Riewoldt still leads the marks. He was very impressive on Saturday night. Took a few grabs. Extends his lead to 161. Doherty behind him in second on 137. Shaw on 134 in third. Simpson in fourth on 127, and Tom Lynch has actually creeped his way into the top five on the leading marks. He is fifth on 123. You then have the leading tackles, Matt Prittis from the West Coast Eagles, Brownlow medalist of a couple of years ago, is leading on 142. Rory Sloane on 128 in second. Ed Curnow is on 122 in third. Levi Greenwood 120 in fourth, and then Zach Merritt is on 119 in fifth. Let's have a look at the ladder. And there was some massive changes to the ladder in round 18. You might remember that the Crows and the Western Bulldogs all had top four spots. They have been driven out of the top four, with the Crows on 6 and the Western Bulldogs on 7th. Hawthorn still leads on top. It's hard to see them actually leaving that top position now. They've got some winnable games in the next couple of weeks. I think the only real tests would probably be the West Coast Eagles at Domain Stadium. I think that's in the second last round, so that could be a tough match for them. GWS in second. It's hard to kind of know what's going to happen with GWS in the finals. They've I guess we have to wait to see where they finish, but they're an interesting side. I'm not sure whether they're grand final potential. I think they are, but yeah, it's interesting. I'm not really sure where to place them at the moment. They're a very interesting side. Played really well on Sunday night to get that lead back and win. The Swans in third, Cats in fourth, Eagles in fifth. You can see there that there's the Giants, Swans, Cats, Eagles, Crows, and also Dogs are all level on points on 48, and then North Melbourne's there in 8th, 4 points behind all those teams. St Kilda there in 9th, and Port Adelaide there in 10th. So it's a very interesting ladder. Very interesting. Okay, time now to get into round 19, and it starts at Simmons Stadium on Friday night between the Geelong Cats and the Western Bulldogs. Very interesting game, this one. In fact, we know that they met a few weeks ago, or a month or so ago now, at Etihad Stadium. Geelong won pretty convincingly by 57 points. Geelong have won the last 9 against the Dogs, and the Dogs haven't beaten the Cats since 2009. And if you want to make things worse, or from a Dogs' point of view, Geelong hasn't lost to the Dogs at Geelong since 2003. So this is going to be a tough task for the Dogs. No doubt about that. Bartel is becoming the 4th Cat to play 300 matches for the Cats, and Enright will be playing his 326 match, which breaks the Cats' all-time games record. So some big milestones there for Geelong, and they will be really motivated to get the win for those blokes. So this game, Simmons Stadium, Friday night, Friday the 29th of July, 7:50 p.m, live and free on 7. Of course, you can watch it on Fox Footy as well. I'm tipping the Dogs because I'm a Dogs supporter, and my heart is with the Western Bulldogs. And to be truthful, they haven't lost back-to-back games this year, so I think that might get them over the line. I know that they've got some injury. They've got a bit of an injury crisis. It doesn't actually look as bad as what it seems. You've got Stringer Dalhouse coming back, and I think there's a couple of others who are due to come back in the next couple of weeks. So they will have a very strong side going into the finals once they get some of their injuries back. So if Stringer Dalhouse comes back, which is most likely they will this week, I think the Dogs will win. The Cats have been poor in the last couple of weeks, very good against the Crows. You know what, they're going to be the favourites, but I'm sticking with my heart. I'm going the Dogs. Saturday, there are 5 games to enjoy, and it starts in Canberra at Manuka Oval between the Giants and the Tigers, starting at 1:45 p.m. If you want to know a fact, Richmond are yet to lose to the GWS Giants. They have met 5 times, and they've been all resulting in Tiger victories. So if you want to give the Tigers a sniff, then just look at that stat. But in saying that, I think the Giants are in much better form. They play Manuka Oval quite well. They play a lot of their home grounds well, of course, the other one being Spotless Stadium. They've only lost 1 there this year. So They're pretty impressive, and I think they're going to win this game. I think against the Tigers. So that's my tip. And then the next Saturday afternoon game, is at Aurora Stadium in Launceston between Hawthorn and Carlton. I think Carlton will come to play in this game. I think they'll take it up to the Hawks. The Hawks will be too strong in the end, but I think Carlton will be there for probably 3 or so, or maybe 3 quarters, and then maybe the 4th quarter Hawks will probably get away, or even in the second half I think Hawks will get away. So that game starting at 2:10 p.m. Live on Foxtel. And Hawks have won the last 13 against the Blues. But in saying that, I think the Blues will take it up to the Hawks. But then Hawks will win pretty convincingly for me. And then the twilight game at the MCG, 4:35 p.m. Collingwood and the West Coast Eagles. Interesting game, this one. Interesting stat, this one I'm about to read out. Because the Pies they have a 10-1 lead in victories against the Eagles at the MCG. So I think I'm leaning towards Collingwood, to be honest. I think the Eagles in the last couple of weeks have been pretty rattled. They haven't played their best football, and we know a couple of weeks ago against Carlton they kind of dropped off and were probably lucky to get away with a win in that game. And then last week they really were lucky to get away with the win in that game. So I think I'm going to tip Collingwood to win. I think they're going to win this one. I think they play the MCG a bit better than what the Eagles do, and yeah, I think it's going to be a good game, this one. This will probably be one of the games of the round, you would have to say. 2 Saturday night games. One of them is at the Gabba between the Lions and the Power. This game starting at 7:25 p.m. And the last time these two teams met at the Gabba, which was last year, the Brisbane Lions actually won pretty convincingly, 102-65. I really enjoyed their football last week. I thought they played some very good football, and like we haven't seen this year, it was probably one of their best games. And you know, the Power, they were impressive for the first half, but then they just dropped in the second half and weren't able to get over the line. So this is an interesting game, this one. I'm actually leaning towards the Lions. I know that's a big call, considering the Port Adelaide have a you know, they're probably the best suited team, or maybe even St Kilda's taken that role now of getting into the top 8. But I actually think they'll lose this game. I think the Lions will win at the Gabba, and I think they'll get 2 consecutive wins in a row and have 3 wins on the board at the end of round 19. I think that's going to happen. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they win. I think it'll be a good game, I think, this one. And the other Saturday night game is probably even more mouth-watering than this one. North Melbourne and St Kilda at Etihad Stadium, 7:25 p.m. Saw St Kilda live against the Dogs, and they played some great football. So this game could go either way. St Kilda hasn't beaten North since 2011, and as we know, Brent Harvey, he is breaking the AFL VFL games record by playing his 427th match. Michael Tuck currently holds that, and it will be broken on Saturday night by Brent Harvey when he runs out to take on St Kilda. So considering all that, as well as St Kilda hasn't beaten North since 2011, I think I'm going to stick with North Melbourne. I think they'll this week book their place in the top 8. Sunday there are 3 games. It starts at the MCG between Melbourne and the Gold Coast Suns. This game starting at 1:10 p.m. They did meet earlier in the year at Metricon. Melbourne won that pretty convincingly. I think I'm going to stick with Melbourne to win this one at the MCG. I think they'll just be a bit too strong for the Gold Coast Suns, but I think it might be a good game of football. You never quite know. And then the mid-Sunday afternoon game, which is at the main stadium in Perth at 3:20 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. That's 1:20 p.m. for those people living in Perth. It is Fremantle and the Sydney Swans. This is a replay of last year's qualifying final. You might remember in the first week of the finals they met on a Saturday afternoon. And the Dockers have actually won 8 of their last 10 at Domain Stadium against the Swans. And Pavlich plays his 350th game against the Swans. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, this one. But I think I'm going to stick with the Swans, even though they don't have the best record in the last 10 games against Freo at Domain Stadium. I think they'll win this game in the end. And then the final game, the Adelaide Crows and Essendon. This should be a comfortable win for the Crows. This game starting at 4:40 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. Should be a comfortable win, like I said, for the Crows. And that is it for this episode of the Ultimate AFL Show, episode 23. Thank you very much for watching. And, well, enjoy round 19. And until next week's episode, I'm Jacob. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.